What's up guys, my name is Jason. In this video, I'm going to show you how I gave my old dated cabinets a new facelift, which I think is very modern. It took just $300 and about 55 hours of work. Just as a disclaimer, I am not a professional. I'm a do-it-yourselfer who enjoys home projects. If you're curious to see what I did, stay tuned. We're jumping right into this. The first step in this process is to label every single door. For me, I used a number system and just put it on the face of the door along with the box it came from. Also make sure that you're leaving these labels on throughout the whole process. You'll thank me later. A lot of these doors look alike, but they'll be just a little wider than the next one and they will not go in the same place. You'll save yourself a ton of time by not trying to figure out where the door came from. After labeling everything, you can go ahead and remove all of the doors. I decided to leave the hardware in place on the boxes with the exception of this one face. The screws were literally turning in the rubber thread, so I had to leave that. Next up, you can just place all the doors in a safe location in preparation for cleaning them off and then getting them sanded and primed. So that was my progress for the first day. It was about an hour and a half worth of work. I was able to remove all hardware and all cabinet faces off the uppers and lowers. There's one that's going to be sanded and painted in place on the Lazy Susan. And then I'm not sure about the drawers yet. I may just sand those and paint them in place as well. Still debating that. Tomorrow's going to be a lot of work. That's when I'm going to be degreasing the cabinets and then hopefully I can sand them all as well. Yesterday I was able to give all of these a good wipe down. It took about 2 hours. I started off with a product called Crud Cutter, which has been shown on several other videos, refinishing cabinetry, but it just wasn't doing much, so I dumped in a bunch of hand soap into the water, and that actually got the process going. They're slightly sticky to the touch in some bad spots, but it's much better than before, where it was just really caked on grease. I think this is gonna sand down nicely, and that's what I'm going to be doing today. Got my sanding station set up here in the garage. If you're able to set up a nice workstation somewhere where it's going to be comfortable, you're not going to be making a big mess inside, go ahead and try to do that. If I didn't have this garage, I would probably be in the backyard in the sunlight, but thankfully I do have this. It's set up just on the driveway here, so most of the sand will be blown out there. And I have a few hours to get this done, so I'm in no rush. I should be able to finish all these panels today. Another point I want to make about a proper workstation, make sure you have this elevated in some sort of fashion. I have a cheap table here that I covered with garbage bags. If you have to just take a board and put it on 2 tires, do that. It's going to be better than kneeling down, doing this on the ground, or trying to have this cabinet face sitting in your lap. You're gonna save your back in the long run. If you need to spend 15 bucks on a cheap table, make sure you're doing that. All of my cabinet faces did have the small silencing pads on them. I peeled those off and then sanded down the residue. If yours has them as well, do not waste time and energy trying to paint around them. Just take them off, go buy new ones. You'll save a ton of time in the long run. So after about 6 hours total, I was able to sand down all of the faces that were removed from the kitchen. I wasn't trying to take this down to a bare wood. I was just trying to expose this a little bit, take off some of the finish, rough it up so that the primer has something to stick onto. And of course, some of it is bare wood. That's just the nature of sanding. My best advice from beginner to new beginners out there, if your pad is worn down and it's not as effective, just throw it away. I probably wasted a half hour or so using pads that should have been thrown away. Just buy more pads than you think you're going to need and you'll be fine. So I waited to clean the faces just before priming. I figured this would be the best way to do it. If I tried cleaning them as I was stacking them, they'd just collect more dust. So just before priming, I went over with a semi-clean cloth just to gather up all this old dust. For priming the cabinetry, I didn't really have any rhyme or reason between using the roller first versus the brush. I tried various different methods, and what I found out was no matter what I did, I was basically going over the face 2 times. There's going to be brush strokes on the decorative portions, and it's just going to be the way it is, so I will be sanding this later on. My best advice is to keep in mind this is a time-consuming process. There are no shortcuts. Also here you will notice I do have this cabinet face elevated off of the table. It's just a cardboard box with a brick inside, and this is so I can easily get to the corners and the sides without picking it up with my hands. All right, I'm about 5 hours deep into this day. I'm just gonna go ahead and call it. I was able to prime one side of the majority of these cabinet faces. I was able to do all of these here. The primer is so fast drying that it's drying on the roller sleeve. Rather than starting another sleeve to get these done, I'm just gonna go ahead and call it quits for the day. I'll finish these tomorrow, and then I'm also gonna determine if I need a second coat on these or if I'm just gonna do the opposite side. I do know I wanna sand these down a little bit with a 220 grit, but I don't know if I need a second coat yet. I'm gonna do a little bit more research, gonna relax the rest of the night. So I put in a super long day yesterday, did about 7 hours straight, drinking plenty of water, a couple Monster energy drinks, snacks throughout the day. I was able to sand and prime the rest of all of these cabinet faces that I had removed from the kitchen. Keep in mind, I haven't done anything to the boxes indoors yet. But these have all been primed, both sides, they are dry. And then also yesterday, I was able to hit these with a fine 220 grit sandpaper. Used the power sander, just went up and down once, and then a sanding block on some of the smaller detail. What I'm left with is a very smooth surface. This is gonna take a coat of paint very nicely. And I did end up doing one coat of primer on both sides. Again, there you just saw me wiping down any additional dust before rolling out this paint. The paint I chose for this project is a Sherwin-Williams Emerald Urethane paint. It's a little more on the expensive side. It's usually about $99 a gallon. It was on sale. I got it for about $85. I did buy way too much. I actually only needed 1 gallon for this whole job, but I ended up buying 3. I was able to return whatever I didn't use though. I bought this because using this product, I do not need any sort of top coat. And again, for painting this out, I did not have any sort of rhyme or reason. There were no shortcuts. All I can say is I took it a little slower than when I primed it. The brushes I used cost about $13. They were a name brand from Sherwin-Williams, and I will say it was definitely worth the money. I didn't have a single loose strand or loose hair from these brushes over the course of the entire project. To elevate these off the ground for drying, I cut up some old egg carton. It worked just as well as painting tripods, which I actually couldn't find anywhere. One thing you can't forget is the hardware. For me, I have stainless steel. It's still pretty modern, so I'm going to be reusing it. Just going to use these stainless steel wipes. Taking a couple moments on each one just to wipe away all this grease. It's something that might be overlooked. You would hate to have brand spanking new cabinet doors, freshly painted, going to install them and realize your hardware is filthy. So have a friend or spouse or your kid help you with this. Something you can do at night after the day's over. Doesn't take long. My wife was supposed to help me with this, but she doesn't want to ruin her nails. So I made a ton of progress on the cabinet faces. I finished putting 2 coats of paint on the fronts, 1 coat on the back. I've shifted my focus now to inside the kitchen. I'm kind of bouncing back and forth a little bit. I was trying to finish this off in sections just because I didn't want the kitchen to be a complete mess. We still need to cook in here. I was able to wipe this down really good. Then I took a piece of sandpaper, roughed it up just a little bit, primed it, roughed that up a little bit more, and then I was able to put 2 coats of paint on it. This is done here, and I'm just doing the drawers now. If we turn our attention to here, I was able to sand, clean, and prime this lower section. That's what I'm working on getting finished today. With any luck, I'll have all the lowers done. They may or may not be dry by the end of tonight. Still working on it. This scene is pretty straightforward. It's just me cleaning any excess grease or grime off of the box here. And then after that, I do a little bit of a light sanding just to rough up this surface. There were worse areas, especially around the microwave, where I really needed to do a lot of scrubbing with boiling hot water just to remove all of the excess grease. If you're wondering what I did for hardware, I left it on until the very last second. Regarding the hinges, before I prepped this, I took the doors back in one at a time, and I placed the hardware in the exact same position that it came from. I didn't want to risk having a hinge that was slightly bent and had been on the same spot for 15 years. Now it's in a different place and the door isn't closing properly. And then before I knew it, I would be just swapping around hinges and then going out to purchase new ones. I really wanted to make sure they were going in the exact same place on the exact same door. And rather than taking them down and labeling each one, I thought it'd be easiest just to do it one at a time, bringing the doors back in. It's a little bit of an extra step. I was concerned that the threads would not take the screws back in the same spot, but luckily that has not been an issue on any of the lower cabinets. They all went in fine, so I'm making really good progress here. So you've seen the whole process. I'm now fast forwarding to the results. This is the final product. It took about 55 hours over the course of 10 days. Cost about $300. I think it came out very good. Everything is looking better than I initially thought it would. I was able to remove the drawers. I was concerned that they were glued down, but they were not. So I took those down, and then I was able to paint both sides. Put on new silencing bumpers. They look crystal clear, very nice. The interior of the Lazy Susan does hide a fun color. This is how the kitchen looked when we first purchased the house about 5 years ago, and I'll leave you with some before and after pictures. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.